An advanced civilization with technology to surpass our own. An unprecedented naval force with engineers who carved through solid rock to build a city of concentric rings. A city that was then lost to time in a single day and night. That's right, today we're talking about Atlantis. Described by Plato 2,400 years ago, hunted for ever since, but never found. Here's the question though, what if we've never found it because we've been looking in the wrong place? What if the sea that swallowed Atlantis wasn't made of water, but made of sand? Today, we're investigating one of archaeology's most tantalizing possibilities. Maybe the legendary Lost City of Atlantis lies not beneath the waves, but beneath the Sahara. And perhaps marking its location is one of the most striking geological formations on the planet. Hey, I'm Luke. I'm an author of archaeological adventure novels. Now this is the Adventure Story Podcast, where we chase legends, uncover history, and of course, look for the truth. Now, this legend starts at the Eye of the Sahara, or the Richat Structure, which is a massive geological formation in Mauritania. It's giant. It spans 25 miles from side to side. Now picture this, a giant bullseye carved into the earth, with concentric rings of different coloured rock radiating outward from a central point. And that's basically what this is. In fact, it's so perfectly circular and so enormous that early astronauts used it as a landmark while orbiting the Earth. For decades, scientists have argued about it. Some think it's a meteor impact crater, while others think it's some kind of volcano. And I tell you this, both of them are wrong. The rocks show no impact damage and there's no volcanic material nearby. Now some experts have come forward to say it's a dome that's eroded over millions of years. But that explanation has problems too. The symmetry is just perfect, and the central plateau is just too flat. And there are signs of hydrothermal activity that don't quite fit in. Now, could it be that the experts can't agree because they're all asking the wrong question? They're all asking how nature created this. What if it wasn't shaped by nature at all? What if it was shaped by human hands? What if the Richat Structure is the foundation of a once great city? Its walls, its canals, its towers, now long eroded beneath the sand. Imagine looking back at New York City 10,000 years from now. The glass towers are gone, the bridges have crumbled, the streets are buried beneath layers of dust. But from above, patterns still remain. The grid of Manhattan, the circular sweep of Central Park, the faint outlines of what was once a living, breathing metropolis. And here's where things start to get really interesting, because this has been described before, over 2,000 years ago. You guessed it, by Plato. As you'll probably know, Plato described Atlantis as a mighty island empire lying beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. Its people were powerful seafarers who ruled parts of Europe and North Africa until the entire civilization vanished in a single day and a single night. But that's not all he said. Here are some of his descriptions, and stop me when these start to sound familiar. Plato described the capital of Atlantis as a circular city made of concentric rings of land and water, 3 rings of ocean and 2 of land, perfectly centered around a small island. Yep, that's right. The Richat Structure has exactly the same pattern. He said Atlantis stood around 5.5 miles from the ocean. Alright, right now the Richat is much further from the ocean, but this hasn't always been the case. When sea levels were higher, the edge of the structure would have been roughly that distance from the ancient Atlantic coastline. And at the centre of Atlantis, Plato described a flat island surrounded by walls of red, of white and of black. Some of the very colours that appear naturally in the Richat's rock layers. And he wrote that the city lay with mountains to the north. Of course, the Richat sits south of the Atlas Mountains, exactly where you'd expect them to be. Even the scale matches up surprisingly well. Plato said the entire island was roughly 15 miles across. The Richat, around 25 miles wide. Not exactly, but close enough to raise an eyebrow, I think. Now, Plato was writing about philosophy, not a history textbook. His story of Atlantis was meant to be an allegory about pride and downfall. But when the geography, the scale, and even the colours of the rock line up this neatly, it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? Could it be that the legend of Atlantis didn't sink beneath the ocean at all, but was buried beneath Saharan sands? Okay, so far we've got some similarities, but that could just be a coincidence, right? I'd agree if Plato were our only source. About 400 years later, the legend surfaces again, this time in the hands of a Roman geographer. Around 43 CE, the Roman scholar Pomponius Mela set out to map the known world, a daring task in an age when much of it was still a mystery. And guess what he wrote on the map? In the position of what is today known as Northwest Africa, just south of the Atlas Mountains, yep, right there where the Richat lies, he marked something very intriguing. In that region, roughly where the Richat Structure lies today, Mela wrote a single word: Atlante. Okay, so it's not Atlantis, nor Atlanteans, but close enough to make you pause. Now, Mela probably wasn't talking about mythical sea people or a sunken island. The way I see it, he was either describing a real civilization that existed there at that time, or he was drawing on a much older source. Maybe it came from earlier traders or explorers, or even Egyptian records. Almost certainly, it came from a source that no longer exists today. If these early seafarers passed down stories of a powerful culture somewhere beyond the Atlas Mountains, it's not impossible that Mela's Atlante was a faint echo of that memory. But the Sahara's a desert, right? How could any civilization have thrived there? Well, that's not exactly true. We know for certain that the Sahara wasn't always a sea of sand. And this isn't speculation, this is scientific fact. Every 20,000 years or so, shifts in the Earth's axis cause the African monsoons to drift north. When that happens, the desert transforms into a vast green savanna, a landscape filled with lakes and rivers, and life. The last green Sahara ended around 5,000 years ago, recent enough that early hieroglyphs show giraffes and elephants and hippos living where there's only now dunes. Cave paintings even show people swimming, herding cattle and hunting crocodiles in wide grassy valleys. Archaeologists have found stone tools, pottery shards and burial sites scattered across what are now some of the most remote parts of the desert. This is evidence of thriving human communities that vanished as the rains retreated. Some sites are so eroded that they're only visible from satellite scans, revealing entire lost settlements beneath the dunes. And then there's the hidden water world below. Ground-penetrating radar has mapped massive ancient river systems under the sand, including one as large as the Nile, the Tamanrasset River, which once ran from the Mauritanian coast near the Richat Structure all the way to the Mediterranean. We've even found whale fossils in the Western Sahara, proof that parts of it were once the seabed. Combine that with the buried river systems and it's entirely possible that thousands of years ago, ships could have sailed inland from the Atlantic right towards the heart of what is now the desert. Imagine standing at the Richat Structure today with sand stretching to every horizon and realizing that 5,000 years ago, you'd have been standing beside a riverbank, surrounded by forests and grasslands and herds of antelope. If the Sahara was once green, a land of rivers, lakes and thriving settlements, then one question remains. Could a civilization that vast have existed without anyone else noticing? Maybe not. There are several legends about lost cities in the Sahara, but one of the most captivating is the story of Zerzura. Called the Oasis of Little Birds in Arabic, Zerzura was a mythical white city said to be hidden somewhere in the western desert. Medieval Arabic texts describe it as a city of sleeping kings and queens, guarded by giants, where buildings are made of white stone and filled with treasure beyond imagination. But here's the thing, this isn't just folklore whispered around campfires, it's mentioned in a 15th century Arabic text, which gives specific, although cryptic, directions to Zerzura. In the 1930s, explorers actually went to look for it. Real expeditions led by members of what became known as the Zerzura Club, a group of English adventurers obsessed with finding the lost oasis. While they didn't find a gleaming white city of sleeping kings, they did find ancient trade routes and several ruined settlements long buried by the sand. Whether Zerzura was a myth, a memory, or the remnant of something far older, maybe even that distant echo of Atlantis, we will never know. But it reminds us that the desert's history runs deeper than we imagine, and that stories buried in the sand sometimes turn out to be real. But what I find truly fascinating about these stories is how they echo one another. A lost city buried in the sand, a civilization swallowed by time, a promise of treasure, of knowledge, and of mystery, just out of reach. When you step back and connect the dots, Plato's rings, Meller's Atlante, the Green Sahara, and the legend of Zerzura, you begin to see the faint outline of something larger, something that feels less like coincidence and more like a shared memory across culture and time. That suggests to me that these legends perhaps aren't separate myths at all, but different fragments of the same story, retold across centuries and cultures, handed down from people who once lived through the end of a real civilization. Alright, I get it. This isn't proof. I'm not saying it is, but it's a suggestion. And that's what gets under my skin, and it's exactly the kind of idea that ends up in my fiction. In fact, my new book, The Sahara Event, takes the question we've been asking in this episode, what if we've been looking for Atlantis in the wrong place, and runs with it. Here's what the book's all about. When an archaeologist dies protecting an impossible secret, her final message sends Eden Black racing to uncover an ancient crystal encoded with the knowledge of a lost civilization, a power that once turned a paradise into a wasteland. From high-speed chases through Marrakesh to an underground chamber older than recorded history, Eden must face a rogue scientist determined to use the crystal to reshape the world. Last time it awakened, the Sahara was born. This time, it could end everything. The Sahara Event is available in paperback and ebook wherever you get your adventures. This is the Adventure Story Podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out today. It's been great to spend some time with you. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe, please like, and of course, share. It'll take you just seconds, but really helps me spread the word about this show. If you have a story you'd like me to explore in the next series, let me know in the comments or on the email, hello@lukerichardsonauthor.com. And if you need some more adventure in your life, and let's be honest, who doesn't? You might like to join the Adventure Society. This weekly newsletter is your ticket to travel with me, to share real-world adventures, and to find out first when a new story or new season of the podcast drops. Head to lukerichardsonauthor.com/adventure society. lukerichardsonauthor.com/adventure society. And if you're a fan of adventure stories like the one I've told today, check out my books at lukerichardsonauthor.com. Bon voyage, enjoy the adventure, and I'll see you next time.